Yeah, hi friends, Doc South here, and oh gosh, it must have been somewhere around 45, 50 years ago. Well, for a while I was a Boilermaker. Got the job because I was tiny, yeah, and wiry back then, and I guess actually I still am, and which was good because it meant I could fit into small places inside of fireboxes of boilers, and I could crawl down some of the larger pipes and work without getting all cramped or stuck. I had a coworker, fella, an old timer named Jackson. Jackson, if I were to describe him, picture Humphrey Bogart covered in soot. Okay, that would. Other than that, Jackson could be Bogart's double, right? And he was a nice guy. Tough as oh my gosh, he was a tough old coot. Man, I wouldn't want to get him mad. Small as he was, I think he'd put your lights out. And but he was a decent guy. Loved his beer, and at work he loved his coffee. And well, we were on a coffee break, sitting inside a boiler firebox, basically a room about the size of a small bedroom with a hole about this big that you crawled through to get into, and that was it. And we were working on repairing some of the fire brick. We were covered with soot and dust, and oh, we probably had cuts on our fingers, and I think I hit my head on a pipe. I remember Jackson saying, "Well, you darn fool! Why'd you stand up so fast? You ought to wear your hard hat." And and all this stuff. You know how it gets. And but we were sitting talking, and I think we were very close to. We were in early December, and I think I said to Jackson, I think Pearl Harbor Day's coming up soon. December 7th, right? He said, "Yep, sure was." And Jackson was old enough to have been in World War II, and I said, "Gosh, you probably heard about Pearl Harbor firsthand, come over the radio and all that?" He says, "Heck no." He says, "I was there." You were there for the attack?" "Well," he says, "almost. Let me explain." And he said, I was in the Navy. And again, he just had this wonderful way of talking. He's taking a sip of his coffee. And I said, "So you were in the Navy and in the early 40s?" "Yep, I sure was." "Now shut up so I can tell the story." And I said, "Okay, okay." And he said, I was on a transport ship, a U.S. Navy transport ship, and we were in convoy. We were heading from, believe he said, San Diego. We were heading to Pearl. And it was early December. We were out at sea, traveling in this fairly large convoy. And he said, "Wouldn't you know it, our darn ship broke down. Doggone machinist mates didn't maintain the drive shaft to the propellers, and doggone if we didn't, I don't know, some bearing went out, and there we were, just darn ship started rumbling all over the place and shaking, and well, that means you got to stop and figure out what the heck's wrong with your darn drive shaft." Stupid machinist mates. I think Jackson was a meat cutter on the ship. He worked in the galley. And he says, "So there we are, stuck, and the convoy leaves us behind." And I said, "God, they didn't even leave a ship to guard you. Why should they?" He says, we weren't at war yet. There was war all over the place, but we weren't at war." So they went on to Pearl, and we're sitting there, doggone it. And he says, "Well, they finally got us going, and we're chugging along, and we're heading straight for Pearl now." And again, you're running pretty much radio silence back in those days. He said we didn't really let on where we were. Nothing. Didn't want, just didn't want anything like that to, to get across into the wrong hands, because it sure looked like there was going to be war soon. And he says, so we pull within sight of Pearl Harbor, and we noticed actually on the horizon a whole bunch of smoke. We just figured they were burning some trash or something, out at the dump or something, at the base dump. But the smoke got bigger and bigger. He says, so what day was it? He says, I believe, he says it was December 8th. We're pulling into Pearl, and he says, I didn't know what to think. We got word, finally, the captain came on the ship's loudspeaker, and he said, he said he had gotten word that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor and that it wasn't going to be pretty. And we're heading in, and we were given permission to line the rail a bit and take a look. And he says, "Man, I'll tell you," he says, "that was awful." He says there was all this smoke. He said we saw the smoke probably 50 miles off, but as we got closer and closer, there was more of it. Pretty soon we got within sight of some of the ships, and they were on fire. They were exploding. He said, doggone, he says, as we got closer into the harbor, there was bodies floating in the water, injured people hanging on to pieces of driftwood and whatever they could that was still floating. People running all over the place. Didn't have we wondered where the airplanes were. So many of them were gone. He said they were shot up. Said we found out it was the Japanese came the Sunday before, and got us. And man, they got us bad. He said I don't think I ever saw anything worse in my whole life. He said I've seen a lot. And I said, yeah, gosh, Pearl Harbor, huh? He says, honest to Pete, he says, we put ashore, dropped our load, and then they made us get out of there since they didn't know if the doggone Japanese would be coming back. And we figured, and we were to get back and get more supplies and bring them, and that was pretty much what we did for a while. He says, man, he's honest to Pete, he says, just made you sore. And he says, well, from then on, we were at war. And he said, man, it wasn't any fun, but guess it had to be done. And I don't know, the look on Jackson's face. He was always pretty much one of these old Pennsylvania guys that, if you did something wrong, he'd kind of, hey, what you doing? You being stupid? This kind of guy. But boy, when I know when he was talking about Pearl Harbor, you could see his heart was broken. He said he just never saw anything like it ever, and it was definitely a shame. But so he was there. My opinion is today being Pearl Harbor Day, if you see anyone who's who was part of the World War II generation, who is part of the World War II generation, there aren't many left, but if you see anyone, you might just want to say thank you, because man, they really took a beating. They eventually gave out a pretty good beating too, but doggone, it was tough times. I'll see you later, friends. Thank you, and God bless. Bye now.